Alright everyone, Tencent just released its new Hunyuan HY3 model, and it's fully open source. It packs 295 billion parameters with 21 billion active, using a 192 expert mixture of experts architecture built for reasoning, AI agents, and real production workloads. You get 3 reasoning modes: a fast default mode, plus low and high reasoning for tougher coding, math, and complex tasks. It also supports a 256K context window for long documents and conversations. Tencent says HY3 is built to reduce hallucinations and starts at just 14 cents input and 58 cents output per million tokens. Now let's stop looking at the specs and see how it performs in real-world tests. For the first test, I'm using OpenCode and asking HY3 to build a 3D model of Doraemon. The reason I'm using this prompt is simple. I want to see whether this model can actually handle detailed 3D modeling or if it falls apart when things get complex. I'm giving it a prompt with detailed character design instructions, so it has everything it needs to generate a high-quality result. In my previous comparison, I tested the same challenge with Kimi K3 and GPT 5.6 Sol. Surprisingly, Kimi K3 completely outperformed GPT 5.6 Sol in 3D modeling. The quality difference wasn't even close. Considering Kimi K3 is a 2.8 trillion parameter open weight model and even competes with models like Fable and Opus 4.8 on some benchmarks, that result wasn't too shocking. But HY3 is a much smaller model, and many people expect it to perform like a frontier model just because of the hype. That's exactly why I'm running this test. The generation just finished, so let's take a look at what HY3 actually built. The model generated everything in a single HTML file, and the entire project is only 299 lines of code. So instead of judging the code itself, let's check the final result. Let me open what HY3 actually created, and there it is. Honestly, at first glance, I don't know if that's Doraemon, a raccoon, or a mouse. It looks hilarious. But jokes aside, this is actually a pretty impressive result. The eyes definitely give off more of a mouse vibe, and the whiskers look like tiny steel rods. But considering the model generated this from a single prompt, I'm genuinely impressed. It even added multiple color options. Let's switch to yellow. That actually looks pretty good. Now blue. Honestly, this one looks even better. And finally red. This version reminds me of those mini Doraemons from the anime. Overall, for a model in this class, I'd say this is a solid result. It's definitely not perfect, but it's far better than I expected, especially from just 299 lines of HTML. That's a pretty good start for HY3. For the next test, let's make things a little more challenging. This time, I'm asking HY3 to build a train simulation where I can control the train's speed. I also want it to look like a blue American passenger train, so this should be a good test of both its coding and visual design abilities. Let's send the prompt. Alright, it's generating now. And while we wait, if you want to try HY3 yourself, you can find it on OpenRouter. The model is currently available with a free API, so you can test it without spending anything. If you end up liking it, you can always add credits later to access even more models. OpenRouter also gives you access to a huge lineup of AI models, including Kimi K3, GPT 5.6, Fable 5, Opus, and many other frontier models, all from one place. Alright, HY3 just finished generating the project. Let's see what it came up with. After digging through a few errors, HY3 finally generated the result. So let's skip straight to it. And here's what it created. First of all, this took almost 50 minutes of my valuable time, so I was expecting something pretty impressive. The train itself actually looks good, but there's one big problem. There's no locomotive. It's basically just a line of train cars moving across the screen. It also added a giant sun in the background, along with a simple skyline made of blocks. The sun actually looks surprisingly realistic, but honestly, I'm not a fan of the skyline. It feels a little too basic. Now let's focus on the train. The animation is smooth, and once the train reaches the edge of the screen, it loops back to the starting point automatically. It's not the most realistic behavior, but it's exactly what you'd expect from a simple simulation. Overall, considering the size and purpose of this model, I'd say the result is pretty solid. It's definitely not perfect, but I actually like what it generated. Now it's time for the third and final test, so pay close attention. For the final test, we're going to push HY3 much harder. This time, I'm asking it to build a hill climb racing style clone. Compared to the previous challenges, this is a much more complex project because it requires physics, terrain generation, vehicle movement, and smooth gameplay. The goal isn't to build a perfect game. It's simply to see how good this model really is when it has to generate a larger, more demanding project. So, let's send the prompt. Alright, it's generating now. At this point, I'm honestly wondering how long this is going to take. The previous tests already took a lot of time, and I don't want to sit here watching a loading screen. So instead of wasting any more time, let's let HY3 finish generating, and we'll come back once it's done. Alright, HY3 finally finished generating the game, and this one took about 15 minutes, which is a huge improvement over the train simulation that took nearly 50 minutes. So, let's check out the result. Right away, we're greeted with a splash screen that says "Hello, Jock," along with a quick guide showing the controls. Nice little touch. Let's jump into the game. And here's what HY3 generated. We've got a car and a driver, although the driver looks like a little cylinder with a head. And the car, honestly, it's kind of hilarious. It doesn't really look like any real car. It's almost like HY3 invented its own car brand just for this game. I'm kidding. But for a single prompt, it's actually not bad at all. The oversized tires look more like truck wheels bolted onto a tiny car, but somehow it works. Let's see how it plays. The moment you hit the throttle, the car absolutely flies. It feels like it goes from 0 to 100 miles per hour in about 2 seconds. The brakes work perfectly, and the reverse speed is just as fast as the forward speed, which is a little unrealistic, but pretty funny. The game also includes collectible coins, fuel cans, a coin counter, distance tracker, and a fuel meter in the corner. That's more game mechanics than I was expecting. Let's play for a minute. And here's my favorite part, the jumps. Look at that! The suspension and jumping actually feel surprisingly good, and the game runs smoothly without any major errors. So after putting HY3 through all 3 tests, here's my final verdict. For an open source model in this category, I think HY3 is genuinely impressive. It's not competing with the very best frontier models yet, but for everyday coding, prototyping, small games, and general development work, it does a really solid job. The outputs aren't perfect, but they're functional, creative, and surprisingly usable. Overall, I really like this model. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more AI model tests like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.